Rod,
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for the opportunity.
you'd like to introduce yourself to the viewers, please, and your company?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Roderick McIIIree. I'm the Managing Director of FinnAust Mining PLC, listed on AIM.
The ticker FAM?
FAM.LN, correct?
Can you just give us a little overview about your company, please?
Sure. Well, FinnAust has actually been listed on AIM for quite some time. I took over as the interim CEO, I think it was about 9 months ago, after some dialogue with Western Areas, who is the major shareholder. They and I and my team have a bit of a history, I guess, going back a number of years. Several of their senior management are well known to us. We've worked with several of them historically, and I think it was fair to say that Western Areas probably wanted to expand the FinnAust footprint a little bit into what was more of a sort of a Nordic sort of region. They were interested in Greenland, and obviously I and my team, we've been working in Greenland for about a decade now, and it fit. So it took a little bit of time to sort of get it all, the acquisition of the Blue Jay through the various regulatory hurdles here in London, but that, I'm pleased to say, was completed, I think, in late February. And now we are just into the sort of the actionable part of the exploration side of it. So things are going well.
All right, so like on the asset front, what attracted the company to the project?
Well, we actually were working in a private sense, working on this project for the last sort of 18 months. We as a team were attracted to it for a number of reasons. I guess probably the three foremost of which are the grade of the deposit, the simplicity of the deposit, and the size of the deposit. So those three things, I think, were sort of the leading edge of the decision to acquire it in the first instance. Those three things also resonated with Western Areas in terms of the acquisition. So the acquisition, to break it down, it's all in the notice of meeting on the 24th of December, but 2015. But in a simple sense, FinnAust Mining purchased the company that I and my team work for, and now we're collaboratively taking the project forward.
All right, part of the mineralisations offshore, can you tell us about the different target areas you're looking at?
Yeah, look, there's three main target areas. I think the first one is the raised beach area. That is a pretty large tonnage, probably a moderate to high grade relative to our situation. Runs for approximately 30 kilometres along a sort of a marine terrace, if you like. That's dry. The second target is an area that's the active beaches. It's the high energy environment, very high grade, something in the vicinity of 50 to 75% ilmenite within that region, and that is approximately sort of 50 to 100 metres either side of the low tide zone. That particular area is something that we're targeting in the short term from a production perspective, specifically the little town of Murisak. We'll probably come to the benefits of starting at Murisak a little bit later on in the conversation, but certainly the active beaches are the areas of the highest focus for us, simply because of the grade of that material. The third one, and I guess this is probably, this is sort of the unknown in terms of the volume and the grade, but certainly all early indications are that this is actually a meaningful volume of material at, I think, would be fair to say, at a grade that would be similar to the onshore areas, so probably that sort of circa 30% again. So the three target areas, the raised beaches, the active beaches and the drowned beaches, they're the areas we're focused on.
All right, so what do the recent survey results highlight?
2015 was actually a pretty big year. We had engaged the Danish Geological Survey, and I know that we'll probably expand on that in a little bit more detail later on, but this is a group who we requested do a number of things for us, and it's an ongoing relationship, but the offshore surveying was something that they focused on last year, as well as sort of a regional sampling, grab sample program, all of those results have surprisingly even exceeded my expectations.
A bit of a hesitant there, you don't want to say anything, do you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's sort of, it's tricky, but
yeah.
Certainly the project is coming along nicely.
All right, you say there's near mid-term cash flow potential. What's your strategy to capitalise on this?
Sure. Well, the short-term sort of focal points at the moment really are to do with licensing, permitting, environmental impact assessments, social impact assessments, and the government, the regulatory side of it, exploitation licence from the government of Greenland. The second part of it, I guess, is the offtake and ensuring that we have sufficient demand for our products such that we can put together an economy of scale that will work in that region. So I guess one of the things that is obvious is that this is a geographically challenging project. However, it does have several aspects that sort of mitigate those issues, and one of which is the grade. So the way we see the project sort of evolving really at the moment is more of it's not a mining project as such, it's more of a logistics project, in as far as we need to put together a supply line or a transport line that moves this material from point A to point B in the cheapest possible fashion. We've engaged a number of groups, independent groups, to work through these processes with us, and those studies are advancing. Towards the back end of this year, we hope to have a little bit more colour in terms of the output from some of these things. There's a number of engagements that we're still yet to do. Hopefully in the next sort of, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, we should have a little bit more news on the final actual logistical pivot, which is the dredging, the transshipping, and the long transport items.
So we're looking at a titanium project. So what you could say, what are the growth drives? What's the outlook for titanium today's market?
Yeah, titanium's actually quite an interesting metal. For those that have no idea really what titanium is, it's in a simple sense very similar to aluminium, but has a strength characteristic that is many multiples of that. I personally see titanium as a similar growth pattern to what one could have seen with the advent of mainstream aluminium, in as far as aluminium historically was a precious metal, and then through a number of technological breakthroughs, if you'd like to call it that, it then suddenly became mainstream to seeing aluminium being sort of 7/10 of your daily metal consumption. I think one of the more interesting aspects of titanium that's popped up in the last sort of 12 months, 18 months really, is the advent of titanium 3D printing. Now this is something that is still in its early stages, but it certainly is showing potential for it to be quite a disruptive technology to the way that current metal production and certain uses of these metals are undertaken. Now, for example, if you, at the moment, you have an aluminium body of an aeroplane or any type of aeronautical machine that is done in pieces, and if you can replace that with a one-piece construction that may be hollow honeycomb structure, there are huge benefits in terms of weight and strength that come with that, fuel savings, and a number of articles, if interested parties wanted to Google Boeing and Airbus recent 3D titanium developments. I think what people will see when they start to research it a little bit is that there is actually explosive growth going on in this particular area.
Market,
but at the moment it only accounts for a very small part of the overall titanium market, but has the potential to be much bigger in the future. Now, in terms of the current uses and consumption, it is an industrial mineral, and it tends to track industrial growth to a certain extent. It's used as the bulker agent, if you like, and a pigment for paints and a number of other things. It's actually body parts, tendons and muscle, for some reason, can grow onto titanium. And there's been a number of
I didn't know that, by the way. I had to come
replacements.
In there.
Yeah,
you just got me up with there for that one, actually.
Again, Google will give you a plethora of recent bone replacement for titanium hips, ears, jaws, face. It's really quite an interesting thing. So I think one thing to keep an eye on, and there's been some pretty high profile investments in this 3D printing part of the titanium universe by some fairly high profile fund managers here in London. So it's an exciting space, characterised by being a small part of a larger industry, but has the potential to be quite big in the sort of coming 5 to 10 years. And really that's the sweet spot that we're trying to deliver this project into, is that sort of very
well, that leads me
growth.
nicely onto the next one. What type of company would you look to secure as a customer for your product?
Yeah, it's a pretty mainstream offtake at the moment. So that there's several layers to the titanium industry, if you like. There's the primary production, which has two main inputs. There's the existing beach mining side of the business, and then there's a hard rock component as well. Our ilmenite actually is a sort of in terms of peer comparison, is very similar to an existing hard rock mining operation. In terms of chemistry and impurity compositions. The benefit that we have with this particular material is that Mother Nature, I guess, has done the mining and the crushing and the grinding and the separation for us and left us a fairly pure product that's sitting on a beach up in North Greenland. So they are the two parts, I guess, that deliver into a refining process that delivers a variable output of titanium dioxide purity for various industries. And it's the 3D printing and the paint pigments that sit on the far side of that refining. So at the moment we have no intention, it may be something that we look at in the future, but we have no intention to move into that refining. We just will deliver this material into multiple customers in multiple jurisdictions. Hopefully we'll have something in the next 6 months on that as well. So.
All right, just to the next section, the management location. The Western area is your major shareholder. Tell us about the relationship and the dynamics, and what benefits does this involve and provide?
Well, look, I guess having Western areas there was really one of the key positives from our perspective. Keeping in mind that I and my team, we were working on this project in a private sense. We felt that we could deliver this and potentially keep the company private and not have to necessarily share this with a public listing per se. But one of the most attractive aspects from our perspective, looking at FinnAust, was that it had a major Australian miner behind it.
Yeah.
And at the moment, much like, and I don't necessarily want to comment on their businesses, but I think that Western Areas, much like everybody else in the nickel industry, is suffering. They're fortunate in that they've got no debt, and they have a very high grade mine that they're working on. So they are probably in the top 10% at the moment in terms of profitability, even though it's not that profitable. So it was that particular aspect that attracted us, having a major Australian miner behind us that was supportive of the strategy. And the strategy isn't necessarily just Pituffik. It's a much broader remit that we've negotiated with Western Areas in terms of it's broader Greenland, it could be Sweden, it could be other projects in Finland. We've communicated our interest on a number of projects to a number of groups that we felt would fit our portfolio quite nicely over the last 6 months. Nothing really has come from that. We're fairly selective at the moment, and we don't necessarily want to put any pressure on the share structure until I think the market comes to realise just how unique an outlier Pituffik is. But certainly Western areas are very supportive of that. So there will be a constant stream of that kind of acquisitions over the next several years. It is something that we are focused on. We have our eye on a number of opportunities, and we're going to continue to explore them.
Okay, just to pick up on Greenland, obviously your company, what experience you have with Greenland and the local economy at this part of the project as well, because it's very harsh, as you know, Greenland. So what's your thoughts on that?
Look, Greenland's actually a fantastic place to operate from an exploration perspective, from a number of perspectives. But first and foremost, I think it's the ability to move around. So a very significant portion of the operations team that's working for FinnAust has worked in sort of the outback Western Australia and sort of areas that have an enormous amount of cover on it before you can actually see rock or anything meaningful to a geologist that isn't just mud. Greenland's one of these unique areas where you can get in a helicopter and you can fly up a fjord and look at the rock structure on both sides of what could in some instances be several hundred metres worth of cliff face on both sides, and you really get a unique sense of three-dimensional geology.
Right.
And there's not too many countries that offer that. Now, the second aspect, and this is probably really what brought us into Greenland in the early days, was that there's probably no such thing as no sovereign risk. But a country like Greenland is as close to that as you're probably going to get in a global sense. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of countries, and we've had experience in them, there's a lot of countries in the world where they're quite happy for you to come in and explore and spend money and construct and then put into production. But the moment it goes into production, time after time you will see that you just have permitting problems or this problem or some type, and ultimately...
Yeah, being politically stable.
So coming from a Danish heritage, if you like, where you have a very strong sense of law and rule of law, you have a very clear and transparent mining act that's drawn from several jurisdictions, one of which is Canada, one of which is Australia, and I think a little bit of European as well. So you understand where you sit in the system, and there's no fudge up there. Everything gets done right. I think one of the things that has really put Greenland into a little bit more of the public's awareness is climate change. And the interesting thing about that is that the climate change is actually one of the key factors that has brought this project, that was known about for almost 100 years, in fact more than 100 years now, discovered in 1915. But it's only in the last 10 or 15 years that the ice and the snow and the ability to access, not just access, but also exploit this project has become a reality. So those two things, I think, the very strong rule of law, the prospectivity of the country, and the fact that it is opening up, is certainly going to put Greenland on the exploration map moving forward.
Okay, obviously you're quite comfortable with that. You recently appointed a lot of different consultants. What for?
Well, one of the things that I guess, and this comes from our historical experience in Greenland, we were originally part of a company set up and I guess defined what subsequently became certainly the largest measured rare earth deposit on the planet, and possibly the second largest uranium occurrence in Greenland. And that was sort of the best part of an 8-year process. And one of the things that we learned through that experience was the key regulators, the way in which to do things in Greenland from a permitting perspective, and the fact that you really need, not just from a market perspective, but from a finance perspective, from a number of different angles, you really need to have, there's no point having two-bit consultants. You've got to have the best in the business. And really that's what we've tried to focus on here. SRK, Geological Survey of Denmark and Greenland, which is a Danish government institution. Orbicon, NIRIS. Shortly we'll be seeing some extra additions in terms of the shipping, the logistics and that side of it as well. Really trying to brand this from the point of view that, again, it's it's a challenging environment, and you need the best in the business to, I guess, ensure you have the best chance to deliver the product.
Yeah, to succeed basically.
Yeah, that's what we've really tried to do.
Okay. Your portfolio, how did your company portfolio fit in your current strategy? What you're actually doing and you're looking to do?
Yeah, look, we've got a number of things there. I guess really at the moment we've got two strategies. One is we are putting Pituffik into production in the shortest possible time frame. The second part of that is again coming back to this concept of acquisitions and really where we are in the market, and I'm sort of, I've been saying it for maybe 4 to 8 weeks, maybe I'm a slight optimist, who knows, it might be a little bump. But I've been involved in commodities for about 25 years, and I'm really starting to see that there are green shoots across the entire board. Now, if that's a function of all the selling was done in January and now it's just a little bit of upside until June, I don't know. But there's certain little themes that I'm seeing repeated in the marketplace that are leading me to think that commodities are going to be a good place to be for the medium term now. And one of the things that I think is inherent in that is the ability to position assets such that you optimise your trajectory out of what has been a commodity.
You've got to be at the base, basically. You've got to be in the game at the base for when it starts rising.
With the best assets.
Rather than the other way around.
That's
when
right.
you're trying to get it and it's risen already,
exactly.
Then it goes down the other way.
Exactly. So that fits sort of back into this, what we've done in Finland. Outokumpu and all of those licenses over there, they really are unique assets in their own right. I wouldn't necessarily call them tier one, but certainly they are, they're approaching the world-class category. There's been an enormous amount of metal mined from the area. We're one of, if not the largest licence holder over the entire region of that. Earlier this year we expanded our licence position by about 50%, and we have a belief in that area. Now, we're not active in that area at the moment. We are looking to just again position that such that when as the market turns, we have a number of assets that allow us flexibility, I guess.
You have the capacity to expand.
Yes, that's right. And so we're really on the hunt for maybe 1 or 2 pretty interesting projects over the next sort of 6 to 12 months that will just complement that portfolio of ultimately what is a very significant production opportunity, a multi-decade, if not multi-century mining proposition, coupled with several very significant, if not world-class in their own right, assets that we've accumulated through the bottom of the cycle. So that's the two-pronged strategy that we're really trying to deliver here for shareholders.
This is the last question, you're probably glad away, but this leads on to this one. Your company, in the coming months, what do you think you will be able to offer to investors?
A lot of news flow coming over the next 6 months. I think what we've seen to date, both in terms of news flow and share price response, is historical in nature. And what I mean by that is that there is an enormous amount of literature on the internet about this project. It's been the subject of numerous campaigns by the Danish government, the Geological Survey, over a century. So there's an enormous amount of information that has just been sort of sitting there residual, waiting for the opportunity to sort of flourish. And I think in 2015, I think what we did as a company not only surprised us as individuals and surprised the Danish Geological Survey in terms of the actual results of those surveys, but it really dragged out of almost nowhere. Again, it's difficult to call this a world-class project because the technical aspects, I think, are still yet to be delivered to the market, but certainly there is enough information there to suggest that this is, in my mind, this is the highest grade ilmenite project in the world. And in my mind, it is also going to be one of the largest, if not one of the largest. So I think that as you peel that onion and you get closer to the actual situation, what shareholders can look forward to is news flow that is characterised by the discovery and development of what ultimately will be a world-class project.
That's fantastic. Great. Thanks very much for turning LSE Share Talk.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, no, it's no problem.